Oh, we're recording.
Best behavior now.
This is for posterity. Meaning nobody will probably watch it.
No, you say that as we wind up having 5 million followers.
That would be pretty surprising and, kind of like follow the passion, like help people, to move through their pain into a place where they feel more flexible and, you know, this act-based approach to me is nothing like it. So,
There is nothing like it, and I don't know if you're a fan. Do you watch NCIS?
no.
So they're in the post Mark Harmon years now, but it's still really good.
Yeah.
But there was a character in the new episode this week that he was being really brusque and cold with everybody, and it turned out he was upset because Gibbs, Mark Harmon's character, had left, and he was a father figure to him, and his own father had actually left in the story.
Oh,
And at the end of the episode, the coroner, who everybody always works out all their issues with because he's in the basement with the dead bodies, he told him, until you allow yourself to get to a place so you can get hurt again, you're never going to heal. And I leaned over to Natalie and I said, "That's ACT." That is absolutely learning that flexibility to be able to deal with that. and
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 I think that yeah, and at the same time, I'm trying to put myself in that place of hearing that, and I feel fear. So I think that's the context of what we do in therapy is to help them understand. It's not just like we're gonna, strip you raw and throw you into some really terrible pain. It's like building the capacities to be there with it in
yeah,
a way where you gain wisdom, you gain capacity, you gain ability. It's not just like brace yourself because somebody's going to punch you right in the face soon, you know?
well, and ironically, this
Or no.
character was dealing with his pain by being in a fight club, so he was being beaten up, and that's how he was dealing with it, and that was easier than dealing with the fact that somebody had left. So
How ironic, isn't it?
yeah.
We'll take physical pain over emotional pain.
Yeah.
Chris was telling me a story that was really relevant to her. She's working, in treatment, in residential treatment, and this guy was just checked out in group. And she's, trying to engage him, saying, I'm just wondering what you feel. And he said, feelings are irrelevant, just like Spock, and it's like people just don't know what to do with them. So it's just like they must not be worthwhile because all it does is make me hurt and I don't know what to do with it. So feelings are irrelevant. So we like as a culture, as a people, it's like we don't need feelings. That's pshaw.
And we'd like to think we've moved past that, wouldn't we?
Mhm.
Clearly haven't.
So then what do you do with them? And that's always like my stump speech in beginning therapy is like, why would we want to feel feelings? Like who wants to do that, right? And I tell him that New York City story of being in the alleyway at night.
Have you told me this story?
Well, here we go. Pretend you're in New York City. Have you ever been there?
I haven't. I've always wanted to go, though.
I've only driven through. So I'm thinking of the movie image, right?
Right.
You're in a dark alley, tall buildings, you're by yourself, not very good visibility, and all of a sudden you hear quick footsteps coming toward you. So you put yourself in that place. What do you imagine is a feeling you might feel in that moment?
Just that thrill of that gut of just electricity, that fear, that just yeah.
Fear. Right? An emotion word, it would be fear, most likely for most.
Hmm.
And when you feel that fear, that electricity, that it shows up in our bodies, right? The fear is often physical.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
like thinking fear. How do you feel fear? Well, usually it's like my breath, I'm squeezing my hands, my eyes are wide, I'm looking around. Fear is physical.
Yeah.
So you feel that fear in your body. Then what do you think you'll do because you feel fear?
You're gonna well, yeah, you're gonna be tense. You're gonna be very watchful, very observant. You're probably gonna bolt at a moment's notice.
Probably bold. Some people will turn and fight. I've heard a few people say that. Turn around, face the threat, right? I'm going to fight my way out. Most people say I'm going to bolt. I'm going to run. And if it is truly like a bad guy, bad person that wants to harm you, and you don't listen to the fear, the outcome is generally not good.
Hmm.
But if you listen to the fear, you got a good reason to believe it's true. The sound of footsteps coming towards you, you take off, you're more likely to survive, you're more likely to not be harmed, you're more
Right.
likely to not be robbed if you can run, right? That's a perfect example of why we want to be able to feel fear.
Right. It saves our lives, literally.
But if you're sitting in an airplane seat and you're strapped down and you feel fear, it's going to be absolute misery,
There's
right?
nothing you can do.
Because there's nothing you can do. So the context is, how do you accept that fear of flying in the plane? What can you do so you can be in the present moment? You can notice the fear and you can come back to what you have some control over. Ironically, and that is like watching a movie,
Hmm.
talking to your neighbor, writing something on your computer. Those are the only things you have control over when you're strapped to a seat in an airplane.
And what you just said is why I love MASH.
What about it?
It's all about being in a horrible situation you have absolutely no control over, and what do you do to find some element of control in that situation? What can you do?
Yeah. And yes, and also maybe some of it's experiential avoidance, but they also like played tricks on each other and built a still, and they did stuff that they had the tools, capacities, wherewithal to make it through that extremely difficult time of like having to operate and deal with death and violence, and it's a great example.
Yeah.
We have these limitations at times, right? So what do we do with that fear that can wash over us? I've had people talk about it, that they're gripping the seat. They can feel their hands vibrating. They're focusing on their breath, and their thoughts are, "I'm going to die. I can't get out of this. What's going to happen?" It's they're in the future because they're not dying in the moment.
No.
They're living in the future of what ifs. And certainly, let's be real, it's a possibility. It's extremely small, but life is full of risk. How do we navigate that so it doesn't overwhelm us? We come back to the present and we can do something that matters or that brings us to today at 10:52.
Back into our bodies.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Push your feet into the floor, as Russ would say.
Yeah,
Stretch. Like you said, talk to your neighbor.
right?
Yeah.
Do one of those diffusion strategies, do the leaf. I'm afraid I'm gonna die. This is overwhelming. What's going to happen to me? I mean, just a phrase that really is like terrifying. Like you lean into it a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I know people have had panic attacks. If you're feeling the panicky overtake, the best way to manage that is methodical breathing, slowing down your breathing, because they think panic is primarily drawn up with you're holding your breath. So your body
That's
takes over.
right.
Yeah, trying
Right.
to breathe.
I that's so interesting because I've talked to clients as well as family members who have suffered with night terrible sleep, night terrors, these types of things, and the doctor said it's because you're not breathing. So that there was a conversation to
Breath.
yeah, it was a conversation to treat sleep apnea. So that's interesting because panic is like a waking nightmare. Then if you're you're not breathing, yeah,
Panic is waking nightmare, and
wow,
breathing is the fundamental physical mechanism through by which we end up in that fight or flight. We've overwhelmed our fight or flight system, basically. So we could end this conversation with a breathing strategy. So do you want to take us through one?
Sure.
Okay.
So this one's my favorite breathing exercise. This comes from a former mentor of mine that spent 7 years in a Buddhist monastery because he was crazy. So this is called square breathing, and this is kind of perfect because you're seeing two squares, Kathy and I right now. And I just want you to imagine either one of these squares has the numbers 1 through 4 along each side in going clockwise. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want you only to breathe through your nose and pick any side starting with the number 1. And you're going to breathe in through your nose, going along the let's say the top of the square, breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to hold your breath 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out 1, 2, 3, 4. Again through your nose. Hold 2, 3, 4. Repeat. In 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. And what you're going to find is it's pretty hard to be panicking when not only is your breath being very methodically controlled and slowed, but you're also lowering your heart rate, and you're cognitively giving your mind something almost in a hypnotic way, a little bit of a trance. It is a meditative technique, but it's kind of the triple threat. You're slowing your breath, you're lowering your heart rate, which is also lowering your blood pressure, and then you're giving your mind something to focus on other than not breathing. So
Right, the irony there, the paradox.
yeah.
You're not breathing. Let's do a practice to breathe. I love that because it's just so simple, and it's easy to remember once you do some practicing.
And that's the key, is it's easy to remember if you practice, right, Kathy? If you
That's the key.
don't, you'll never do it, and it's easy to forget.
So if this was helpful and you like what you heard here, give us a call or visit us at woodhaven@millcreek.org. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Kathy. See you soon.